Yeah, my name is Ben Aldridge and I'm playing Thomas Wayne in Pennyworth.
So let me ask a question. We hear about Thomas Wayne's values all the time from Bruce and Alfred in the later years.
Yeah.
Will we see a lot of that going into this series?
I think, yeah, the interesting thing about what we're doing is we've got the end point with all these characters, so it's looking at the starting point, and we've stayed faithful to the comic books in that he seems to be very moral and upstanding, but he's caught up in quite a kind of covert world. He's dabbling in some espionage, and that line of work is forcing him to kind of make some compromises on his principles. So he's not squeaky clean in our version of Pennyworth. He appears that way at first, and then various things unfold throughout the series that make him start to have to do some questionable things that he's not comfortable with doing. But I think you start to begin to see some of the heroics that go in to make up Batman, but also the strong moral compass that's handed down to Batman you start to see in Thomas Wayne as well. So the DNA is definitely there. Also, Martha Kane, she's called in our version, but Martha Wayne is a huge character. So you get to see both halves of Batman, their personalities that then become Batman, and they don't. It's not a love at first sight tale at all. There's a lot of tension and friction between them, and they disagree on everything. So that's a cool thing to see and to explore what eventually becomes, Batman.
The Batman mythos is very, very deep. There's many different sections. Which one did you personally pull from in order for your inspiration for this role, or do you feel that the writers pulled from?
I think because it's pre any of the canon, I think Bruno hasn't looked specifically to the different incarnations of it. So I just looked at the comic books for visual references, and it feels like he's contained visually to the Joe Chill murder scene and within all the films as well. So I don't know that I specifically looked at a certain version of him, just the character elements of his, but what they wanted this character to be very much about, or they wanted him to feel like a 1950s movie star. So in my audition process, there was lots of talk of Cary Grant and movie stars like that. So my research was looking back and watching those films, which was great fun to do, like South by Southwest, North by Northwest, whatever. But we didn't have to deep dive into the comics too much. They were really useful. That's where I have a moustache in the show, and Thomas always has a moustache in the comic book, so that's where that came from. But yeah.
Is there a Cary Grant movie you would suggest we watch?
North by Northwest, no? Is that? Yeah. Loved it. Yeah, and also it's a similar. There are moments of Thomas's story that are similar to Cary Grant in that film, where he kind of gets caught up in things by accident and he's not quite sure where the truth is. So yeah, that was something that I rewatched a couple times. Yeah.
So, building on what you answered earlier, how hard was it when there's not an abundance of backstory on Thomas Wayne in his younger years? Where do you start and then build from there?
I think what we all did, I know Jack had this particularly as well, that we just really leaned heavily into Bruno's scripts. His scripts are so detailed, and he knows the characters so well that it's there on the page. So you don't have to do too much imagination, too much creative work yourself, because they're really Bibles for us to kind of go by, and he's done all of that thinking. So we just have our job is just to bring it to life. Yeah, so it wasn't.
Mostly done.
I feel like the heavy lifting in terms of who they are is done, and then it's kind of collaborative as a process where you go along. Like you'll grab a very insightful conversation with Bruno at the side of set, and he'll give you loads of tidbits about the character that you hadn't thought of, and he'll also listen to how you're feeling about the character and the journey. So it's kind of quite a collaborative process to find who they are.
Do you think that this show is going to bring in fans who were skeptical about an Alfred, Thomas Wayne type show coming into it?
I think so, yeah, and I think it will bring in fans that aren't necessarily even comic book fans. I think comic book fans, there's a lot to latch onto, and there are little Easter eggs throughout as well, and there are kind of tiny little hidden gems that if you know the comic books well, you'll be able to recognise them within the TV program. But also, I think it will draw a whole new audience. I wouldn't even really call it a spin-off. It goes to like the genesis of that relationship. It's the very beginning of it, and it's set in a 1960s London that we have never seen in any of the comic books. And in that way, Bruno had free reign to do what he likes. But also, it's very much a character-driven piece. It's very much about the psychology of all these characters and the world that they're all caught up in, and decisions that they have to make. So, yeah, I think it will bring in a whole new audience. As well as it's got like a really dark, twisted, macabre element to it. As soon as you think you're in a kind of recognisable 1960s London, someone will walk through the back of shot like an extra with a full leather gimp mask or a crazy costume that's unexplained. There's loads of like weird hooks into it that I think there's a good element of the show where people will try to be working things out, like little hooks where they go, is that leading to this or is that leading to that? So yeah, I think it will draw in a new audience as well as an existing comic book audience.
Can you just tell us briefly about the relationship between Alfred and Thomas and how complex that it gets and what challenges they run into?
So it takes a while to kick off. It's a chance meeting without giving too much away, but they're kind of thrust together, and Thomas needs something from Alfred. Thomas is a bit of a fish out of water. He's an American in 1960s London. He's not streetwise, and he doesn't quite know how to protect himself within his work. So he sees Alfred as a tremendous asset to him and really is after the skills that Alfred can bring to the table. But Alfred's quite reluctant to that initially because Thomas is trying to draw Alfred back into a world that he's actually trying to move away from. So they're kind of circling around each other, and they've both got something that the other needs. And I guess that's what the series chronicles, is that relationship development.
So, why is now the right time to tell this story?
I think because, there's obviously a fascination with comic book characters right now. I think it's saying to an audience, we can go way, way back now. I think this is, as Gotham was, a comic book world that you can build from scratch, drawing from history. There's nowhere we can't go now. If we want to go back to 1888 and do a DC world, we can. If we want to go back to the First World War, we can, because when you have the ability to build worlds which DC characters can inhabit, the sky's the limit. I was very worried that there weren't going to be the villains at the beginning in 1960s England, but that was short-sighted. England has got the best villains in the world, from Sherlock Holmes days to Jack the Ripper to Myra Hindley to Jekyll and Hyde to Dick Turpin. You go back and back, even if they're real characters or characters of fiction. England has some of the best characters, that Dracula, that DC drew on. So I think that was a reason to go back, was to open up the canon and to say, the characters within it are so strong that it doesn't matter where you go. The only thing I can't do is walk outside daylight San Diego and put a superhero in a leotard there and just say, and the cops show up. That to me was never sat true. I think when I sat down and read a comic book or a comic, it transported me. So I believe it's my job, all of our jobs, to transport the audience and put them in a safe place where these stories feel as if they're real, not the 9 o'clock news version.
Does the show take place in the same?
I would say yes. Because obviously one singer, one song, right? If you're going to go back and sing a classic, let the singer have some freedom to sing it the way they want to sing it. But I do believe that when this guy, the end of this show basically is traveling on that boat with a pregnant Martha Kane to the New World in America and seeing Gotham come towards us through the mist. That's absolutely a way. I think the fascinating thing about this show is much more about every single character in this DC universe, especially in the Batman universe. It feels very rooted in reality, and therefore I want to know, why did this guy become the best mentor for Batman? What did those parents instill in him that he can use later on in life. Well, there's a great scene, there's a couple of good scenes later on in the season where Martha Kane and Thomas Wayne are chalk and cheese, just battling with each other, completely fundamentally disagreeing about how to deal with a very difficult situation. And you see, right in the middle of them, Alfred Pennyworth going, just like a child be, if you two ever had kids, he's going to be one fucked up kid. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like they're both living alternative lives. They're both trying, getting involved in espionage when they could just be rich entrepreneurs. You know, these people care. And there's something about that that's instilled in their son. And there's something about Alfred Pennyworth who can mediate that. Being a guy from a family whose sole job it is to raise other people's kids and to, you know, look up to and adhere to and promote overprivileged people. Of course he's the perfect person to be there for them.
Speaking of being the perfect person, how do you feel Jack Bannon brought this character to life? The iteration we've never seen before, the younger Alfred that gets all these skills and everything that is confidant to Thomas Wayne.
Yeah.
How do you feel Jack brought all that to life?
Jack auditioned for 5 months. It was very hard for me and Bruno to give our baby up. And we put so much of ourselves into it personally, being two guys ourselves from humble backgrounds in London, but Jack kept coming back. And every time he came back a little more confidently. And he always cheered the room up. And I always say that Jack, like Alfred Pennyworth, it doesn't matter if he's talking to a gardener or a gravedigger or the Queen of England. He's the same guy. And I always, that was Michael Caine's thing. I was saying Michael Caine had all these notes around his house in every reflective surface. You're going to make it. You look great. Love you, Michael. Today's the day. And he would walk around all day going like, yep, that's it. Absolutely, you know. And Jack we were talking about that. And when I watched Jack put the suit on for the first time, we brushed his hair, and he walked in a confidence that I was like, there he is. He is the guy we want. He makes it easy to write for because he's inhabited this character now, and he's starting to realise that you're allowed to draw from your own personal experience too. It's slightly schizophrenic, but it works for actors every time. So yeah, we channeled all of our stuff and Michael Caine's stuff into him, and we landed a special actor. Yeah. I'm embarrassed to say that when she home videoed herself wearing leopard skin pants on a leopard skin couch with like palm tree wallpaper, and I was like, who the fuck's that? I had no idea. I didn't know that she was a platinum selling soul artist. I had no idea. But she understood Myra Hindley's, she understood, it like she had read what Bruno had written, and she was like, she was the only one really who inhabited that character from the very beginning. And I became obsessed with Paloma at that point, and we spent a lot of time talking and became very fast friends. And she'll tell you that when I approached her to direct, I would walk like Bet Sykes, and I would tilt my head that way, and it's funny. She was like, she was stealing it all because I didn't realise I was doing it, but she was the one who brought it up. She said it's actually quite helpful because in the distance she could see Bet Sykes standing there. I'm like, I'm not even holding anything, but she would hold her bag like that and tilt her head because she's an angry working class villain who basically has been told to work for the upper classes, and kind of there's a deep resentment that she pushes down, and there's a school mom quality to her that if you do cross her, she will stab you in the eye, as she does in this thing. I mean, the cruelty, but at the same time, when she says, at one point, she says, why are you laughing at me? I've got feelings. And you go, oh, fuck, I know, I'm sorry. And you end up apologising to the person who's about to stab you. So Paloma got all of that incredibly correct, and it was, I remember 5 months with Jack Bannon, bless him, and then we sent one video of her in a leopard skin pants to LA, and they were like, that girl. I was like, yeah, I know.